Okay, perfect. Let's get started. Being the time to get started and for respect of your own schedules, welcome to this Eurorap lunchtime seminar. It is my pleasure to be here chairing today this seminar and moderating. Let us first introduce myself and who is going to be presenting today in this seminar. My name is Franco Asato, and I am the Training and Accreditation Coordinator with IRAP. We may have crossed paths before in the training and accreditation scheme that you may be into today, or you may have been into this year. And today our presenter is going to be James Bradford, who is the Global Technical Director at IRAP, that you may know him already, of course. Welcome, James. Let's see the agenda quickly and do the housekeeping quickly so that we can get to the important part of this hour of talk that we will have with James. We will have a presentation of Star Rating for Designs. RAP Basics Star Rating for Designs is the official name of the presentation. And then as soon as James finishes his presentation, we will have a Q&A session with microphones open. What I would like you to ask while having the microphones open is to respect the order. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. Sorry that the toolbar is in Spanish because my Zoom was in Spanish when I created this slide, but you need to hit here in reactions and just raise your hand, and I'm going to allocate your order to speak, and I will unmute your mic. That's going to be when James finishes his presentation, and during his presentation I will be reading your questions in the chat, so feel free to ask questions through the chat, and we will answer those questions at the end of the presentation as well. This meeting is an hour long, so we have 60 minutes to see the content and to discuss. So I hope you enjoy this hour while you are having lunch there in Europe. And of course, this is being recorded. This is a recorded session. We of course are going to have the link to this session in our media outlet so that you can see it again with no problem. So now it's time for James. Welcome, James. I am going to stop sharing so I can let you share, and the floor is yours.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Franco. So welcome to this session. I'll be taking you through Star Rating Designs, covering up some of the key principles and the ways in which it can be used and its context. So the first thing I want to do is give you a bit of a background on IRAP and the tools and how that then relates to road safety. So as IRAP, we're active. I think the latest number is in about 108 countries where our protocols have been used. That's across over 2.5 million kilometers worth of road. Most important, though, I think, is the amount of investment that has been made safer as a result or connected to the IRAP protocols, because ultimately this is what our push is about, is actually making roads safer and seeing that investment flow into them to enable that to happen. So as IRAP, we're an umbrella charity. So we do this by actually working with other organizations, very much in partnership and enabling other people to do things and use our protocols. On the right here, you can see a number of the regional RAPs that have been set up. So more have actually been created since more recently. And the key is this webinar is very much branded as Eurorap, and so Eurorap is the entity that looks after Europe and coordinates all the different activities and supports them around Europe. It's also worth noting that we have other partners who work with us both at the top in terms of funding and development banks and investing in roads, likewise road authorities in the middle there, wider organisations looking after road safety, and at the bottom here's some examples we've got of different research partners and centres of excellence we work with. So that's a bit of introduction to IRAP. If we go on to the next one is, well, what is the context of road safety at the moment? And road safety is a ginormous problem. So, for example, it's the biggest killer for under 19s around the world. That's been recognised, and we're currently in our second decade for action. And as part of that, the WHO has actually released a set of road safety performance targets. They cover all the different pillars of road safety, but for us as IRAP, with our focus being on infrastructure, the key ones we're interested in are Target 3 and Target 4. So Target 3 is very much about that all new roads should take into account the safety and meet a 3-star or better rating. Likewise, we've got Target 4, so that focuses on roads that are already open and operating, and saying that 75% of travel should be on those ones, high standard roads that take into account the road safety. And if you look into the more expanded text, it also talks about the star rating in there. So both of those you can see relate to IRAP and the protocols that we freely provide people to use around the world. And what we're seeing more and more is actually different countries and different road authorities actually adopting this as part of their road safety plans and protocols and stuff. So here's an example we've got on the left where it's from Greece, and they were actually putting in there saying that 75% of their TEN-T network should be 3 stars or better. Yeah, that's 80% of travel, and then 80% of travel of it by 2030. And likewise, another one from Croatia saying that 75% of travel on their network. And we're seeing this again and again. So what does this mean? And how do we understand this? So one thing it's really worth pointing out is a lot of emphasis is of course put on the star rating, because this is very much a policy tool. It's very easy to understand and communicate, especially to the public. And what it does is it provides you with an individual road user risk for whether it's a vehicle occupant, a motorcyclist, a bicyclist, or a pedestrian as they travel along the road. So it might be my risk as I drive my car along a certain road, or it might be your risk as you walk along the road. So that's really good for actually setting in there a minimum safety standard. And that's what the 3-star or better is. Following on from that, we've then got the fatality estimation. So this changes it from individual road user risk to collective road user risk. So that's what is the risk to everybody on that road as they're using it. That's really important for prioritizing which roads to invest in first, because of course you want to invest in the roads where you'll actually see that fatality estimation reduced the most. The ways we actually help support people as this as well is actually generation of investment plans, whether that's the Safer Roads investment plans that give you a concept of this is where you could invest on a network and what the likely impacts of it are, or the more recently added user-defined investment plans where you're taking those and customizing those to reflect exactly what's on your network and the local context. And they provide you with that practical economics of this is what you could do on your network. This is going to be the reduction in fatal or serious injuries. This is how much it will cost you to build those. And then this is what your return on investment is for building those versus the benefit to the economy of avoiding those crashes. So what we've got is we've looked at targets 3 and 4, and then we've also seen what tools that we provide as IRAP. And what we want to do is actually look at the targets in context of the road life cycle. So for any road, it will go through the planning stage. Often, typically for a road that's already existing, we'd categorize this as part of target 4. Next, you'll see that early design being created. This is looking at what the possible routes of the road are going to be, what are the typical cross sections going to be. It then moves into the detailed design phase where you actually putting the specific information into it, understanding exactly what the cross sections would be, where the drainage is, etc. The next stage, and so both of those are very much focused on target 3. The next stage is when you're building it. So certainly the star rating can actually be used to understand what is the risk as when traffic is operating on a road that is currently under construction. Of course, once you've finished building it, you open that road. And that's an ideal time to actually understand, okay, so we have upgraded it. What is the star rating now on that road? What are the fatality estimations likely to be? As the road's being operating it, you maintain it to keep that standard. And certainly as things change, whether it's flows or speeds on that network or improvements in understanding of safety, you then plan your policies and your strategies around actually ensuring that network gets safer and safer over time. So how does the star rating, the fatality estimation, what process do people actually go through? So on the standard way of using star ratings, that's very much focused around target 4. An inspection system would go out. So whether that's as part of, whether that's actually specific for road safety, or whether it's built into asset management, that doesn't really matter. The road features are then collected from that video imagery that's collected in the road survey. At the moment, a lot of that's being done manually, but through initiatives like we have, like AIRAP, that's being done in very much more of an automated process, whether that's from telematics data or from artificial intelligence being run across imageries or satellite data. After you've got to that point, you've basically got an upload file that represents the road features on the road network every 100 meters. That's then uploaded into our web platform called VIDA. So what VIDA is able to do is take that road data, process it, and actually generate the star ratings, then generate the fatality estimations, and likewise generate those investment plans. It's worth saying that the star rating and the fatality estimation are based on international research. What we've got is our global technical committee in place, and these are the guys who very much look after the governance of the IRAP model. So they'll be the ones looking at the latest research and stuff like that. So they're very well respected and very well published researchers from around the world. So in terms of star rating designs, well, where do we go with this? Yeah, how do we evolve this process? So what we've got is actually star rating designs is providing that feedback loop. So it's looking at that investment plan and going, okay, I can see what it's suggesting. It's then doing a road design and actually refining it and saying, let's take into account some of that countermeasures that have been suggested, taking that new road design, recording the road features from it, then putting that back through VIDA to generate the new star ratings and new fatality estimations. What's really good here is actually all this is still happening whilst it's in the CAD package or in the feasibility stage. So this can actually be done before there's any significant investment in that road. So it can be done very quickly, and it also is a cyclic process. You can get the star ratings for your new design generated or a new fatality estimation, say, I hadn't realized this was a consequence of what was being done off my road design. What could I do differently? And that can then help you go back through that loop yet again to actually understand what can be improved, and therefore actually build the road right first time. So star rating designs is very much an overarching application of star ratings within that design process. And what's quite important is actually realizing that it can fit into different stages of that design process. It can either be used at the really early concept stage, and when you're using it at this stage, just bear in mind that you'd be using it to a much greater tolerance than you would be later on, but at least it's giving you that indication of the level of safety you'd be getting. It could also be used in the design phase, that more detailed design, to make sure that actually you're getting that road right and you're getting dotting the I's and crossing the T's. But also you can use it with the investment plans and the fatality estimation to actually say, well, this is what the benefit of doing it this way would be. So straight away you can see that, well, maybe we've increased the budget by a couple of percentage, but actually we've had a massive impact on the fatal or serious injuries this road is likely to have. So let's take these in different stages and explore what can be done in them. So if we look at the concept stage, often what you'll have at concept stage is different routes. So here you can see we've got a generic road and they're trying to link two junctions between that road on the right with the one you can see up here on the top left. There was two different feasible options. One is the orange one and one is the green, and how they link into that local network. And so what was really good was they were actually able to use the demonstrator. So this is a tool that we provide in VIDA. So if you don't already have a VIDA account, I'd recommend that you go into VIDA and sign up. It's all free to use. And then once you're inside VIDA, you can then click on the demonstrator. With the demonstrator, you can either use one of the standard cross sections we've started with to be your start point. And then you can customize that and say, well, either doing that with a drop down to say, well, that's not quite the right roadside I had in there. Maybe it was a downward slope that was slightly further out. Or if you prefer using the icons, you know what they are, you can use these. So you might want to say, well, actually the flow is slightly higher than that. I'll be running at 10,000. And then you can see these updating. And likewise, you can be looking at these to refine the process and going, when you click on chart, you say, what different crash types are coming out of this? And, oh, should I be doing something specifically? So you can see orange here, there's an issue here on the passenger side. And then being able to actually tune that and go, well, on the passenger side, yeah, we see we've got a tree. Well, what could we do differently? Either we could clear the roadside better, or maybe we could put in a safety barrier. Let's move that closer to the road. And so you can see that and how it's changing the risk and ultimately changing the star ratings. What you can do is create your generic cross section within here, potentially save it. And once you have saved it, it then it's available in this list. One feature we've added in recently is the ability to actually share it with other road users. So if you're other users of VIDA, so if you're working in combination with somebody and building up a project, you can do that. Likewise, you can then go back through that route and go, okay, where is it getting difference? Maybe that's at the intersections. Then code up specific intersections and save those. And then once you've got all of those ready, you can then actually create a coding file and export that out of the demonstrator to be able to actually understand the risk. That would then allow you to then say, okay, I've got 3 kilometers worth of the standard cross section, 100 meters of that intersection, and you start being able to multiply those up together. So ultimately you can get to the point of saying, for this route 1, it might be 3 stars for vehicle occupants and 2 stars for motorcyclists, but it's much, much better for your vulnerable road users. Or you might want to be you might have route 2 where certainly it's been designed and it's far better for vehicle occupants, but not so good for vulnerable road users. And it starts allowing you to understand the choices that you've got in front of you of these different routes, and ultimately make the right selection. So it's not just always based on the bill of materials, but actually it's based potentially on the bill of consequences. You know, what is it going to be doing in terms of safety, this road? And likewise, even when it's in this phase, you can actually start selecting the route, but also then saying, well, we've got to do something. If we were going to go for route 2, we can clearly see that it's not as good for vulnerable road users. What are we going to do differently to actually support them better? Next up, star rating designs can also be used in the more detailed design process and to create the value case. So I'll give you an example that one of our partners has done. So this is Arup here in the UK. They were working on one of the national highways routes. So this was often referred to as the missing link. And you can see that these are the before star ratings, where the majority of that network in and around it was 3-star, but there was this section here that was 2-star and a little bit of 2-star, but majority of it 1-star. So you can see it here in the middle. And so it had been identified very much as somewhere that needed investing in, somewhere that needed to be improved from a safety perspective as well. So what they did is they went away and they looked at different route options, figured those out, then went into the detailed design process. They worked out the new route along there and changed the way the roads were joining previously. They built up the new cross sections. They then used the Starry for Designs web application and recorded all of those cross sections in there across the new profile or the new route. And then they were able to use this and actually process that data through VIDA. So they could actually see that when they'd actually improved that road, it was then going to come out as 3 stars or better. And that was really good because straight away they'd met that target. They could then look at it and go, okay, so we've got that detailed design right. What could, where do we go from here? Then ultimately they were able to say, well, this is the fatality estimation before we did anything, and this is afterwards. So what would the annual benefit be for it? Interestingly, by the time they got to this stage, and it was still in the CAD package, they were able to see there was a significant spike in the risk at one location. And this they went back to that and said, well, what's going on here? And it was very clear that actually there was a small property access that was joining that road. And so what they were able to do is look at different scenarios for this road and go, okay, how can I do this road differently? Do we need to have that property access there? Well, actually we don't. And they found that they could make a compromise on the grade and make it a slightly steeper grade on the way up to that property access. And that then allowed them to actually move that property access so it went underneath the road and they no longer needed there. And so they could see by a small compromise on the grade, they could actually even more improve the safety on that road. And so what this was doing is providing them even better benefits on that, and was able to then communicate that back to the road authority and say, well, yeah, this is why we're making these decisions. We've hit your policy target, but actually we can take it a step further and provide much bigger annualized benefits. So how could you use star rating for design? So I've shown you the demonstrator. You could also use the Star Rating for Designs web app. You could do it very much in Excel. So if you know VIDA really well, you can actually get the core download file, export it out of VIDA, and actually edit that manually. Or likewise, in the future, what we're hoping to be able to do is, whilst it's still in the CAD package, being able to actually edit, produce the star ratings and the fatality estimation. So whilst you're making those decisions, what's it looking like? You can just press a button and say, this is the safety level on your network at the moment. So let's have a little bit more of a detailed look at how would you use the Starry Designs web app, and what's the process you would go through for actually generating during the detailed design stage. So the 4 steps you'd go through is you define your geometry. Then you upload your road designs into the web app. You can link those 2 together before finally being able to code those road features. So if you're defining the geometry, you've got 4 different ways that you can do this. You can either actually draw it in there manually. So if I quickly go back and have a look at those other options, you can import that data from Vida if you've already got there as a baseline. You could create yourself an upload file, whether that's from data that's already in Vida or manually do that. Or finally, you can actually upload the geometry from a mapping file. So this is from a KML. What we found recently is uploading a KML, it's got to be in a very specific version of the KML. So if you have any troubles with that, please do let us know and we'll help you get it into the right format. If you were to do it manually, you can define what the road name is, what the section is, and what the carriageway is. Then once you're at that point, you can actually then just go and click on the map and be able to pop those in there. Now, no, you don't need to be, you're just drawing the center line of the road, so you can actually, where you've got curves, go in and do it in detail, but when you've got straight sections, you can really stretch it out. After you've done all of them, you can then say, okay, and what it'll do is it will then split that route you've just plotted in there into 100-meter sections for you. After you've done that, you can upload your road designs. So what you can do is go into the system, choose the files you want to upload. So these are just some demo examples I had. And save that into the system. Then ultimately, you'll have got to the point where you've got multiple of those multiple of those design files in there, and you'll be able to actually go through those and potentially put them into folders if that really helps you categorize them. The next stage is to associate the designs. So what this is actually linking those design files you've got together with the 100 meters. So you can see here, I've got 3 different ones in there, and I'm saying which 100 meters that relates to, that standard cross section. So this one, the actual cross section was across all of it. And then I can go back and I can actually link in that intersection. So I'm saying that intersection is the very first 100 meters. Once you've gone through that process, actually making sure you've actually attached all of the relevant cross sections or plan views or intersections designs to each 100 meters, you can then go through and actually code the road features. So you can see here, what I'm doing is I'm looking at this cross section. I'm saying, okay, so what's on the left-hand side of the road where you can see that it's a tree. You can see the distance from the road, from the edge of the carriageway is between 1 and 5 meters. You can see based on those measurements there. You can see that there's a paved shoulder built in there, so that's between 0 and 1 meter. Likewise, you see there's a paved shoulder on the other side. There's no detail in there for the shoulder rumble strips, and of course we've got a tree. You can go through and look at all the different ones, so you can see that this is, it can be classed as a straight piece, or as a moderate curve. It's got wide lanes and 1 lane in each direction. And so you can keep going through that process, looking at each of those relevant tabs recording the different road features that are available to you. So now, because we're on that same 100 meters, we can look at that. I'll go back to that one. Is at the top here, you can see I actually associated those two different designs with this 100 meters. So we've got a junction there, so I can now click on that junction. I can then look at it and go, okay, what type of junction is this? Well, clearly it's a roundabout. What quality it's going to be? Well, we're going to build it as a good quality. And likewise, what's the intersecting road volume? It was the same as it was before. And is there any channelization? You can see quite clearly here that channelization has been added. And there's no access points. The next we can do is go along and put some flow in there. And the relevant vulnerable road users. Now we go back to the cross section, we can see that it's undeveloped on both sides. Oh, and the key thing to also say, and I don't know if it'll come up later on in this video, is you can also then add another layout if you can't really tell what that roadside is, and actually put Street View in there, or if you've got videos on Mapillary. And that then allows you to actually get that final level of detail, the stuff that might be missing in those design plans beyond the edge of the roadway. And here you can see the speed limit was going to be 90, but we're expecting people to be driving at 95. And then if you want, you can put notes on there. Lastly, what you can do is actually save that to all the relevant 100 meters that you've selected it for. Once you've actually recorded all of your road features, you can then actually go to the star rating score results. So this, when you click it down, you can actually submit it for quality assurance. And what this will allow is somebody to actually go back through that data and go, have you made some of the right decisions? Have you made assumptions that may not stack up? Likewise, you can then actually push that straight into VIDA and get those star ratings created. And so that will then allow you to, once they've been, VIDA's done the processing, actually move in and have a look at that road network in VIDA and see how the star ratings are performing. So what does that look like in terms of what's the process we'd suggest that you go through to actually start using star rating for designs in and amongst your projects? So the first one is we'd recommend that you join one of the inception meetings that we hold. Following on from that, we'd recommend you do the Star Rating for Essentials course. This helps you understand the context of star ratings, learn more about the methodology and about VIDA. Following on from this, there's a Star Rating for Designs course that provides you with that next level of detail to understand what can I be doing and how can I be using the Star Rating Designs web application. If you want to be using it in a commercial way, we'd recommend that you do the accreditation for Star Rating Designs. This will give you the confidence that you are actually using it to a high degree and using it correctly. And then also provide others, people like potential clients, with that knowledge that you are operating in the correct way. Likewise, as IRAP, feel free, if you're doing it as part of a design project and you need support, do get in contact with us and ask us questions. And then finally is to actually go through that full accreditation process after you've done that interim. So that was a very quick tour through Star Rating for Designs process. What I want to do is take you through also having a look of what can that end up looking like once you get into VIDA. So let's have a look at an example. So if we go on to results. What we were able to do as part of this is have a look at this. This is the existing road. So I'll just load it up. So this is the N321 in the Netherlands. Please excuse the delay. My internet's not enjoying me presenting at the same time. So notice I didn't clear the filters. So I've actually selected up the two different roads by mistake. So you can see this road for vehicle occupants is predominantly 2 stars with a little bit of 3-star right up at this end. And what you can do is you'd be able to actually look at the detailed road attributes and go through going, okay, what's causing this? You know, why is the model saying that it's high risk? Likewise, you could look at the investment plans and see what kind of suggestions were coming out of that. And when I reviewed that, I could quite clearly see that the model was identifying that there are high risk items on the roadsides. So if we have a look at Street View, you can see this road has trees quite close to it. And it's going at a reasonable speed. So you could say, well, what are the solutions for that? So as it was going through the design process, I said, well, maybe we put vehicle restraints down the side of the road. Or the other option is maybe we actually replant these trees further back. Likewise, what could we be doing in the medium? Because you do get that the model is identifying that there is a level of head-on risk there. And so one of the solutions was to take that central wide line and actually make it even wider with some central hatching. And so what I was able to do is actually go through those and look at them in turn and going, what would the star rating be if I changed those? What would the fatality estimation be? And then I could actually look at them in detail and say, okay, which is the best option between replanting those trees and putting in those safety barriers. And so what I was able to do then is actually have a look at these long features, the features that go quite a long distance down the road, and decide what approach that I'd be using, so making sure it was consistent. So you can see in this, by putting those barriers in there for this section, it's certainly gone up to 3-star, but it wasn't enough to actually pull this. So then I went back through another time looking at more of those point-based features, things like intersections. And it very quickly became apparent that in this location, there were a lot of intersections that were 3 or 4 legs, but didn't have any turning pockets. And because there wasn't particularly much room on the road to potentially build in a roundabout or something like that, it was decided that what we should do is explore the option of putting turning pockets in there. And so I did a scenario just exploring that on its own to actually understand whether that was a good approach. Did it have a significant impact on those fatal or serious injuries? And ultimately, by looking at all the different scenarios in parallel, I was able to make that best decision and pull it all together into a final route. And so let's have a look at this now. So here you can see by doing those different changes and selecting the relevant ones at the relevant places, we could then push that road all the way up to 3-star along its entire length for vehicle occupants. Likewise, we could look at in terms of those fatal serious injuries, and also in terms of that, what kind of crash types we'd expect on that network. So let's start first with the riskworm. So bear in mind with riskworms, you've got to filter it down to a single road section. So I'll do that now. So here you can see how the risk is varying along loads, and comparing that with the original one, you can see how much it would have changed. So you could quite happily add another filter in underneath and then compare those two in side by side. Likewise, you could look at the different road users. You say, well, for pedestrians, how is that risk varying along the road? And you can actually see that, well, all of those approaches I was doing were actually about vehicle occupants and motorcyclists. That actually I didn't go back there and think, okay, what are we missing in terms of vulnerable road users? And you can see there's some significant spikes along here. And so that straight away says to me, well, I haven't done my job well enough. I need to actually start thinking in more detail about the vulnerable road users along this route. And then finally, you're able to look at the fatality estimation map and say, okay, where are these fatalities on this? And do I need to do anything more significant along this route? And so from this, you can see the darker areas are actually where the fatality estimations would be the highest. And so we can be using this actually zooming on certain locations and understanding what that risk is, and is there anything more that we could do in those specific locations. So that was a very quick tour through star rating for designs and giving you a brief overview of what it is, where it can be used at different stages in the design process. So if I hand back over to Franco to take us through the next stages of this.
Thank you so much, James, for your presentation. Let's now open, we still have 15 minutes, so we can make, of course, a Q&A time for us to clear your doubts about what James has presented. I think that what James presented is a very powerful tool that it's clearly shows that the power that has to enhance road safety from the design, and that makes much more feasible to have 3-star or better new roads for the future. We have a question in the chat, James, from Andelo. Andelo says, regarding the fatality estimation feature, what's the base crash value attributed to coded road features, and can it be user calibrated somehow? And then I'm going to comment another thing.
Yeah, brilliant. So this is a really important question. So with and I'll provide a bit of context on it. With the star ratings, it's very much a policy tool. And what we've done in the model is based on the published risk factors. So they'd be like the crash modification factors. We've built the model on those so that as the risk varies along the road, those risk factors kick in. And what we've done with the star rating to start with is we wanted it to be an international benchmark. So if I had a road in Sweden and I dug it up and put it into Azerbaijan, say, and it had the same flow and the same speed on it, it'd be identical. because we want them to be operating to the same standards. However, when we get to the fatality estimations, we know that in real life, that road in Azerbaijan is probably going to perform slightly worse, if not a lot worse, because the vehicle fleet is going to be very different. The number of people in each vehicle is going to be different. The vehicle maintenance is going to be different. The level of drink driving and stuff like that. So when you're at the fatality estimation level, that's when you calibrate it to the known number of fatalities on the network. So that's when you have that crash data, but it's very much network level crash data that's used to actually calibrate it. So yes is the answer. It should be calibrated to that relevant network that you are looking at.
Perfect.
If
Thank you, James.
if you're having problems like you're suspecting those numbers are too high, do get in contact with us as IRAP. We would certainly more than happy to help support you to make sure that that road network is calibrated correctly.
Thank you, James. Brilliant. Before reading another one, we have Hamisi there who wants to speak. Go unmute yourself and go ahead, Hamisi.
Hi there, Hamisi. We can't hear you at the moment. You're unmuted now.
Yes.
Go for it.
I've got just a small questions about the safety. You have already talked about the safety of 19 years old and other pedestrians. Do you consider the person with disabilities? How safe are they on road?
So certainly yes, so what we've done is when we put the star rating model together, especially for, and this is for pedestrians, what we wanted to do is reflect that for all pedestrians. At the moment, we're aware that the star rating model is quite high level compared to the kind of problems that you might encounter, like drop curbs and being able to go down the road and up. So that's one of the things we're certainly exploring to see if that could be taken into any more detail. Likewise, the other things that we're looking to do is actually evolve our model to actually take into account the things like the permissible width of a footpath. So would it be wide enough for you to fit through there with your wheelchair, or does it preclude you from doing that and therefore mean you have to go in the roadway? So it can help you understand your level of risk, but it's probably not in the level of detail that will be sufficient to tell that difference between a standard, a person walking down the road and say a person in a wheelchair or somebody with sight difficulties.
Well, are there no road signs or whatever to protect them and know that this is the real place for person with disability to move as pedestrians?
So that's something we're working on at the moment. So bear with us, and we're aiming to evolve our model to allow it to provide you with that much more level of detail, because we realise it is very important.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Hamisi. Then James, on the chat, we have a couple of questions also from Ahmed and Harman. They say, is there a similar star rating for sidewalks and walkability?
Yes, so what we have is we have the 4 different star ratings. So there's star ratings for vehicle occupants, there's one for motorcyclists, there's one for bicyclists, and there's one for pedestrian. So certainly that pedestrian one would take into account whether there are sidewalks, whether there are crossings, and other things there for pedestrians. Bear in mind, it's the level of risk to that pedestrian rather than the walkability. So walkability can take into account a much more wider context sometimes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, James. I can see a last one on the chat from Stuart Fowler. He says, hi, James. In the example where you have used the demonstrator tool at concept stage, how do you group the various demonstrator sections to get a summary for the route, as you might end up with multiple different star ratings for each section individually?
Yeah, this is a really good question, Stuart. So what I would be doing is actually using the coding file feature in there. So I would save the different cross sections I have, and actually then export those out or download those from there with the demonstrator. And then what you can do is actually copy the individual roads multiple times. So to represent how far you go down the road with it. And then where you've got, say, an intersection, put that other 100 meters in there. So you're very much arranging different 100 meters in the Excel file. And you can either use that with the results coming out, or you could then potentially put in any missing variables and upload that into VIDA to get the full star rating. I can see also Mustafa has asked a question. And he said, "Hi, do the safety concerns are only valid when the road design standards cannot be met?" So what I'd be saying is, and this very much depends on the road safety standards you are using. So, and also how you're using them. So what we've seen in some countries, the road standards are really good and really effective and will help you build it to a minimum level of safety. But we've seen it in other places around the world where actually it's almost act to hold their hands tied to saying you can't use features in this way, or you can only design your roads in this way. And it's actually, by a result of that, made the roads higher risk. So there was certainly one country we were operating in, and they were using some quite old design standards. And they were saying that the way you terminate a safety barrier would be to only use a fishtail end or a sloped end or ramped end. And certainly, yeah, we're aware that actually things have moved on since those were used as the standard way of doing that. And actually, you should be having a crash safe terminal to absorb that energy, because a fishtail will actually puncture through a vehicle, and a ramped end will launch a vehicle and flip it typically. But their road standards were precluding that. So thankfully, in that circumstance, I was actually able to work with the road engineer and look for alternative solutions that still fitted within the standard, and that was to actually curve the barriers away from the road. So they still met their design standard, but they found a way of making it even more safe. So Mustafa, you've come up with a clarification. Do you want to come out with that? Do you want to talk us through that? Because I might be misunderstanding it slightly. Do you want to put your video on and your microphone?
You there, Mustafa?
Yes, hello.
Hi there.
Hi, James. Hi, Franco.
How are you?
Fine. Okay. I have a question about the design. We are here in Qatar facing many issues between the designers and the road safety here. For example, sometimes we making some junctions or injunction or access to commercial area or something like that. The design already matching with the standard and no issues, but still the design produce the risk. For example, the angle when you go from branch road to main road still already have 70 degree, and you can to see the visibility very nice, but still the behavior control for the risk. How to solve this? I always facing these issues. I want to control with behavior, but with design, but I can't do with that. You get it, my point?
I think I understand what you're saying, and so yes, so you're meeting your design standards and you're getting those through, but actually what you're recognizing is that there's still high risk at that location. And so this is where I'd encourage you to use Star Rating for Designs to actually go, what are my other options? What can I do to actually improve that situation? Yeah, is there anything I could do differently, whether it's adjusting the speeds, speed limit and the operating speed in that situation? Or if you're talking about that intersection, could you put channelization in there?
Yes,
And it's
intersection,
that
yes.
kind of thing. It's about looking at what other tools are in your toolbox. And likewise, I'd say is don't consider road standards as the target you've got to achieve up to maintain. Is I'd see those as a minimum set of standards. You can always go above and beyond making your road safer.
The intersection when the signals is green, and also we have the free right turn or turn right controlled, it's always produce the crashes there in this point after the the signal directly. If we already bought the 100 meters distance enough to merge between the T-bar acceleration or to main roads, is always having crashes. I don't know exactly the problem with the modeling or something is not comply together. Yani, I cannot find solutions for this issue after directly the intersection.
Okay, so what I'd suggest, this sounds like a very specific example. What we'd say is, can you reach out to us, and what we can do is go through it in a bit more detail and look at those specific sites and help you get through this.
Yes, I hope so. Yeah.
No problem.
Yes. Thank you. Bye.
Good to see you again.
Thank you, James. Thank you all of you for having spent the last hour with us. I hope this presentation was useful for you, and it was indeed really interesting. Of course, Mustafa and Stuart and whoever who wants to reach us for further information, you can contact James with his email address, who he has already shared that, and here is mine. And we will be more than happy to help you through the specifics or any issue that you may be having with any of our tools or any part of the methodology. One question that I had on my chat privately was about accreditation for star rating for designs, which is a good question that we come across every now and then. It's definitely on the pipeline. Hopefully soon we will be in a position to launch this kind of accreditation. For now, the accreditation on analysis and reporting is with the usage of VIDA. It's very important, and it's going to be almost surely a pre-requirement when this accreditation for star rating for design comes in. So if you want to gain time, pursuing the accreditation for analysis and reporting would be a smart choice now. And of course, keep in touch, because whenever we have news about new trainings or new accreditations schemes, we are going to share it with you for sure. So, I want to thank you all again, and especially James, for having taken us through this presentation, this last hour. And do not hesitate to reach us if you have any doubts, or if you want to dig further in the star rating for designs world, let's say. Next month, we will have another Eurowrap lunchtime seminar. This time it's going to be on performance tracking using star ratings. So keep posted on our media outlets to know the date and the time of that presentation. So thank you, guys. See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.